All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this week's Regional Report, a GPEC Virtual Series. Very important topic today. This week's seminar is on our community in action. We are about to hear from some very great leaders in our community. My name is Eric Sperling. I'm the Managing Director here at the Social Television Network. We are a streaming network here based in downtown Phoenix. You can find us on the App Store. You can find us online. All of our shows and segments are dedicated to local leadership and community growth. Hence our relationship with GPEC and their CEO, Chris Camacho. He's appeared several times on our network. If you're not familiar with GPEC or the Greater Phoenix Economic Council, they are our regional economic development organization representing 22 cities and towns and Maricopa County. It is their mission to recruit businesses to the market and enhance competitiveness here in the region. And now, of course, doing a tremendous job helping all of us keep connected through this weekly virtual series. I do want to mention that next week, the seminar will be about the impact on construction, housing, and commercial real estate. That's April 22nd at 11 a.m. Also, a quick note, want to let everybody know that GPEC CEO Chris Camacho will be giving a special economic update on the status of the region. That will be next Friday, April 24th. So be sure to check your emails for more information about that. Okay, let's get on to today's discussion. Some quick housekeeping notes for everybody. This will be about a 1-hour webinar. Audience members will be muted without video. The webinar is being recorded and will be shared on the GPEC website and social media. Now, you may submit questions using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, but due to time constraints, we just might not be able to get to all your questions. Should you experience any technical difficulties, just try logging out, checking your connection, and logging back in. That seems to work. And then we invite you to share this information on social media. Please feel free to tag GPEC and use the hashtag Greater Phoenix Together where appropriate. Okay, today we are hearing from Ahron Cohen. He's the president and CEO of the Arizona Coyotes. Robin Reed, president CEO, Black Chamber of Arizona. Danny Seiden, Director of Government Affairs over at Intel, and Steve Seleznow. He's the President and CEO of the Arizona Community Foundation. And Steve, we're going to start with you. You've been President and CEO of the Arizona Community Foundation since 2010. Prior to that, you served as the Deputy Director for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's U.S. Program in Education, where you managed a $2.5 billion investment portfolio. Very, very active, of course, in our nonprofit community here. So if you can, just kind of let us know about the impact we're seeing right now, some of the responses that your foundation has made.
Thank you so much, Eric, and thank you, GPEC, for including me in this important conversation. You know, this is a very interesting type of crisis because it's a two-edged sword. There's the health crisis and there's the economic crisis. And when you put the two together, I think, as we're all seeing, that the impact is exponential. I think it's important to think of the nonprofit sector similar to the small business sector. Without the kind of business model that makes access to capital easy. So the nonprofit sector relies a great deal on generated contributions from donors and individuals and foundations. Some of their revenue is based on government contracts, some of it on service. So the business model, to begin with, even prior to a crisis, is an uneasy one. And nonprofits, as many of you know, because many of you on this call are either nonprofit leaders yourselves or have supported nonprofits either through your companies or through your own personal interest in supporting the community. The nonprofit sector is also the 8th largest driver of our economy, so it's really important to keep in mind that what we lose in the nonprofit sector has a real impact on our overall economy. We often don't think of them as being at the table when we talk about economic development, but they are an essential part of our economic ecosystem, and as they go, so does our economy. No one would want to lose the 8th largest driver of our economy. But I am fearful we'll lose a substantial portion. And while there are small business grants available and people are really hustling to get those, typically nonprofits do not have the kinds of relationships that small businesses have, either with bankers or other, as I said, access to capital. So their ability to mobilize quickly to get the small business loans for which they qualify is even that much more difficult. So my fear is that with the nearly 22,000 nonprofits we have in the state of Arizona, we could lose a substantial portion. I don't even want to put a number on other than substantial, but a very large portion that won't weather both the pandemic issues and the economic issues. What the good news is that the business community and the foundation community has stood up and stood up immediately, with major companies making significant contributions to a number of funds that have been set up. There, of course, is the governor's fund, Arizona Together, that's raised about $6.5 million. And our fund, the Arizona COVID-19 Community Response Fund, which we've raised about 11 million, Valley of the Sun United Way, more than 2 million. And when you look at Arizona Gives Day that occurred last Tuesday, and you put all that together with lots of other giving, there's been about 35 million raised to support the nonprofit sector and to keep them alive and keep them on the playing field. But I should hasten the group to think about what's happening now as phase one. In any disaster situation as we have now, there are two phases. There's a relief phase and there's a recovery phase. We're still in the relief phase. That is the kind of immediate response to get capital to organizations that are helping people affected by this, either people that have been unemployed or those in the healthcare sector. And, you know, that money is driven by people's hearts and emotions, as you would expect. But we also have to keep our eye on the long term and on the future investment that's going to be needed to rebuild the nonprofit sector during recovery. And I wrote an op-ed recently that the Phoenix Business Journal ran, which I appreciate, trying to signal all of us that if you think of this being a car accident and you know, the EMTs arrive and they bring the pain relievers and the bandages and they help deal with your pain and they help stop the bleeding. And then after a week, the bandages come off and the pain has subsided and the doctor looks at you and say, you know, we're going to have to do reconstructive surgery on your face and we're going to need you to be in 6 to 8 months of physical therapy and it's going to be really expensive. That's kind of the metaphor. We're dealing with the pain relief and the bandages now. We all have to be focused on the recovery later and the kinds of investments that are going to be necessary to sustain the robust nonprofit sector that we have. The generosity that I've seen from the business community is amazing. I look at what's happening in other cities through other community foundations across the country, and we're doing equal and in some cases better than a lot of cities in terms of how our companies have stepped up and how our foundations have stepped up. But there's a lot more investment that's going to be needed in the months and I fear maybe even the years ahead.
Well, Steve, thank you so much. We're going to bring you back in for some Q&A in just a few moments, but I want to shift gears and send it over to Ahron Cohen, President, CEO of the Arizona Coyotes. Under his leadership, Ahron helped the Coyotes achieve an all-time franchise record in sales, season ticket revenues. In the past fiscal year, the Coyotes contributed another franchise record, donating $3.4 million back to the Arizona community. Ahron, thanks for being here today. And typically about this time of year, we're talking about potential playoffs, we're talking about the whiteout. Instead, we're talking about the impact that this is having, not just on the Coyotes, but sports in general in this community. So can you kind of give us a lay of the land as to how the impact is affecting the sports landscape?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's great to be with everyone here today. I wish we were together talking about playoff hockey and, like you said, the whiteout coming back to Arizona here. But it is what it is, and we need to adapt and you know, find solutions, you know, and help everyone get through this together. Look, I think sports and other live entertainment events, you know, have been hit among the most hard, you know, compared to anyone, and are most likely going to be the last ones out of this. It's a challenge. It's a challenge for us as a hockey team. Right now we had 8 home games remaining. We had 12 total games before the pause. I think in all of the various sports leagues are looking at different options of whether they're playing with no fans, whether they're doing this at neutral sites, all these different iterations of how we can continue on with the season. Nothing is going to be done unless it's absolutely safe, both for, if we have fans in the stands, making sure that it's a safe environment for everybody to come to the games. And if we don't have fans, making sure it's a safe environment for the players and the other people that are involved in putting on a game. What goes along with that are a lot more questions than answers. Timing, we don't really know. What does this mean for next season? Like all of you, we're paying attention daily to all the new studies that are coming out, and really trying to take guidance from the health authorities, both locally as well as nationally, internationally as well. And our hope is that we can come back playing, as soon as it is safe, and obviously as soon as possible. During this, anytime you're going through a challenging situation like this, where a nation, a world is facing adversity, you're looking for things that bring people together and unite us together as one. And sports, just in its tribalism component, has an ability to do that like few other things can. And at least a lot of the people that I'm talking to, there's a tremendous yearning for sports. I think we can all only watch so many, simulation games or so many reruns of, Coyotes games from 2013. I think people are really dying for live content right now. So hopefully we're in a position where we can provide that and help heal. But one of the things that I've tried to talk to people even before this crisis came about is the definition of what it means to be a professional sports franchise. And you think the obvious of you're playing hockey, you're a hockey team, you play hockey games, that's kind of your core purpose, your core function. And I really challenged our staff to say, no, we're more than that. We're an entertainment brand. We're a unique brand that has the ability to connect with people like few other companies can. And we're also, and probably most importantly, we're an entity that can truly engage with and make the community better. One of our core pillars of our organization is to positively impact this Arizona community. And now's an opportunity to really step up and lead in that regard. And one of the things that we have an audience. We have a lot of people in this community that engage with us. So that gives us an opportunity to really draw attention to some critical needs right now. We did some things with St. Mary's Food Bank recently, where myself and our general manager were supporting the governor there. And through our creative content, we're able to distribute that out to our fans and help raise awareness and bring more money for a critical need. And I look at this as obviously a tremendous challenge for all of us, but also an opportunity for us to step up and be leaders and help guide this great state through this crisis.
Ahron, again, thank you so much for taking the time with us today. We're going to bring you back in. We have some specific questions, sports-related questions for you when we get to Q&A. But let's send things over to Robin Reed right now. Robin is the president and CEO of the Black Chamber of Arizona and president of Occam Sustainability Partners and principal and partner with Enfluent. In collaboration with the board, Robin has transformed the chamber into an exclusive and forward-thinking community that delivers quality tools and information to its members. And Robin, we have a great relationship. You've been down to the studio several times, been a part of numerous leadership segments. I've gotten to know you quite well. Just a few weeks ago, we were talking about all the great opportunities that this community has, and now the focus has definitely shifted. So can you tell us a little bit about the impact you're seeing and the responses that your community has had? We'll wait for Robin to unmute his button there.
Thanks a lot for inviting me. I'm really, really honored to be on this panel with such amazing individuals and who are continuing to do great work in the community. In answer to your question, this has been very interesting. Number one, the opportunities still exist. Obviously, we've had to step off of the path we were on as a community and focus on this health and economic issue, but opportunities continue to exist. And believe it or not, even through this situation, opportunities will arise from this. As it relates to the chamber, interestingly enough, we were literally we were days away from presenting our second annual inclusion summit when the pandemic really took hold and there started to be dramatic changes happening within the community. So we had to pivot very quickly. Obviously, as a business, our very first step was we needed to shore up our own organization, which wasn't difficult to do, but we needed to make some very quick moves to tighten down some of our expenses. In preparing for a large event, you've got deposits out in the community, you've got anticipated costs coming, and you need to pull those back and make quick business decisions. From there, what we needed to do was to get a better feel for what this situation entailed. This pandemic, when it started initially, I was communicating with several of our largest employers here in the greater Phoenix area, and we were looking for ways to provide assistance and funding to, at that time, the predominant issue. And if everyone recalls, just a few short weeks ago, the predominant issue at that time was moving to a remote protocol, right? We weren't in the mode we're in now. It was, okay, how do we prepare for a shelter-in-place order? How do we get ready for this? Well, we need to start moving people to more of a remote protocol. So we were working on technology issues, and that was the primary thing. And I was working with one of our largest employers here in the state. They were very active. We were gathering information, and truly, in the blink of an eye, that shifted, and it became, how do we save businesses? How do we keep everybody from being so severely economically impacted by this that we can't survive it? Once we felt like we got a foothold on that, it shifted over to the PPP funding. And that became the predominant issue in the small business community. So I found myself then pivoting yet again to going through just the myriad of information that was being thrown at me, as well as everyone else, with regard to the PPP funding. It was coming out, and one of the things that was not clearly stated at the beginning was an applicant needs to have a deposit account at the institution in which they're applying. They don't have to have a long-standing relationship. You can apply the same day, but you needed to have that. So that information wasn't being shared as quickly as it could have been. And so you had applications being declined because they didn't have an account. So what I found myself doing throughout the day was sifting through the information, trying to find the most reliable source, the most accurate and the most comprehensive information to share with the community. Once that happened, it was then getting the feedback from the banks, from the communities, from the employers to see what was happening. Were loans getting funded? I'm happy to say that I know several instances in which funding was being completed. In fact, an organization on whose board I sit received nearly $200,000 in funding, so I know it really works. But as soon as you hit that stride, we find out this morning that the funding has been depleted. They've closed the first round of funding because all the funds have been depleted. So now we're back in a wait and see mode. So in terms of how the chamber reacts to that, again, we're trying to stay in front of it. So the first thing I'm encouraging people to do, small business owners, is if you have an existing application submitted, contact that financial institution and find out for sure, don't make an assumption, find out for sure that your existing application will stay in place and in the order it was received when the next round of funding comes out, or will you need to reapply? Banks have a great deal of autonomy in this process, so they may handle it differently. The second thing is, if you have not submitted your application, there's a number of resources out there that will help you submit your application correctly, because the challenge with regard to PPP funding is the most common reason someone is declined is mistakes in the application process. The most common mistake that I'm hearing directly from the bankers is the amount they are requesting is not in line with the calculation for how you determine that amount. It's not that they're doing anything incorrect, it's just a misunderstanding of the calculation. So a lot of what we've done is we've gone from fundraising event prep mode to digging in deep and getting very, very granular, not only with our large employers and our bankers, but our small business owners. trying to answer those questions that are out there, trying to make sure that information is timely and accurate, and at the same time staying aware that we have to remain nimble, because tomorrow the initiative might change once again, and we may need to be prepared for that as well.
All right, Robin, again, thank you so much for joining us today. Keeping small businesses educated. We'll bring you back in just a moment, but let's bring in Danny Seiden now. Danny joined Intel as Government Affairs Director in support of Arizona operations. Danny's an accomplished attorney and public affairs professional, currently serves on the Greater Phoenix Economic Council Board of Directors, also served for 4 years as Governor Ducey's Deputy Chief of Staff for External Affairs and Federal Relations. Danny, thanks for being here. A lot of knowledge, a lot of expertise in this area. Can you tell us about some of the impact and responses you're seeing?
Eric, thanks for having me. GPEC, thanks for doing this important panel. I think this is a very prescient topic, and I'm happy to be here. You know, when it comes to Intel, I think everyone sees our logo and they think about us as a tech company, and for good reason. Our technology is virtually everywhere you go and touches everything in everyone's daily lives. It's in your cars, it's in your phones, it's in your PCs, it's in the hospitals. We are woven into the digital and critical infrastructure of people's lives. That's why we're labeled an essential service. But when it comes to Arizona, I just want to take a step back and remind everyone that this would be our 40th year as manufacturers here in Arizona, and we employ over 12,000 people. So we're actually a very large part of this community. And, you know, we're your neighbors, we're fellow parents, we have kids 2 doors down right now attempting and potentially failing at distance learning. We're in this with you. We're doing our best to figure this out along with you as well. And that's why, as I go through what we're doing, it's coming from our employees. It's coming from the top with great leadership from our CEO, Bob Swan. It's coming from the head of our pandemic leadership team, who is Darcy Ortiz, who's seated in Arizona, a very active member of this community. And it's coming from our employees here who make up this community. So what is it that we are doing? I would start first with a pledge. And thank you, Bethany, for putting up that slide. So Intel has made a pledge. It's something that's very unique, and a couple other tech companies have joined. We are opening up our IP to other companies that are willing to take that and use it to battle this pandemic. And, you know, I will use an example that just hits a little close to home. If you were driving around downtown last night, you know, some of us need to get out of our house and just go for a drive, and not for any reason, maybe you just want some fresh air. But what you would have seen is everything was lit up blue, and it was lit up blue to honor those heroes. You know, typically we're talking about police and firefighters who are running into burning buildings. Well, right now we have doctors and nurses who are going into the front lines and exposing themselves to this pandemic every day. And so what we've done already is leveraged our technology with a company called Medtronic, and have a pilot now where we can do a remote control ventilator, which allows doctors to control these ventilators from a virtual distance, which lessens their exposure to them. And that's just one example. It's an exciting example. It's new. It's in a pilot position. So it's very exciting. Our CEO is talking about it. Again, just one of the many examples we could get into. We're into health and life sciences, cloud services, OEMs, comms, in providing the ability to do distance learning, this Zoom call. Intel touches everything. But let's talk about what we're doing in terms of other giving. I think if you go to the next slide for me, Bethany, that would be great. This is where we talk about our community. Just a quick reminder of who we are in the community. 12,000 employees, highly technical workforce. Prior to any of the pandemic, we were already at $33.8 million charitable giving, about a $4.5 billion spend with local Arizona organizations, and we've been manufacturing 40 years. And this is ongoing right now. In fact, we do a match for volunteerism on a grant basis. And I was just told by the person who manages that for our group, that's worth about $1 million, and that's going to hit this year based on just the hours that our employees volunteered last year. So that's aside from the pandemic. That was going to happen anyway. That's just how generous our employees are and how ingrained they are in this community. Could you go to the next slide for me, Bethany? Another important thing to say at this point, if you were to take anything else away from what I would say, forget about our giving, forget about what we're producing. Intel's first and foremost priority is keeping our workers safe. This was the culture before the pandemic. My first day on the job, it was safety first, safety second, and safety third. If you're walking and looking down at your phone, you're going to get cited for it. If you are not holding onto a handrail, you're going to get cited for it. If you're typing too much, you're going to get cited for it. They care about safety over production, and that's only increased now. I use those minor examples. Think about how they treat a pandemic. We are using all the best known methods that are out there and magnifying them. So you can see we have signage, we have sanitizers, and we have social distancing. And I can tell you we're using shift staggering, we're using social distancing wherever possible to keep our workers safe. That is the #1 priority. You know, the next slide for me, Bethany, that'd be great. I don't have control of the slides, so yeah. And just to talk a little bit about our giving, you know, what are we doing? So we have to date donated 1 million in PPE. Now these are masks, gloves, and other items. This is across the country, is equaled about 80,000 surgical masks for Arizona already delivered. And this, we give to the state, and the state finds where those areas are of best need. And my understanding is there's more to come on this. We are supporting our communities. You know, Steve Seleznow with the Arizona Community Foundation mentioned this, that he's received a lot of donations. Intel has donated $1 million to his organizations to boost those local nonprofits. We recognize the importance of them. We work with them all the time. Thanks for the thumbs up, Steve. It's a great organization. He supports fantastic nonprofits. And without them, communities do crumble. They find the families that are in need and they support them. They find families that are hungry and they support them. And Intel recognizes that. So we have donated $1 million to that. And that is part of a greater $10 million donation that we've already given as well. And that's, I would include with that, Intel has agreed to match up to $2 million of employee giving campaign that's going on right now. And another $4 to $6 million that's going elsewhere into the country. I've made this a little bit Arizona specific, but we're doing this all over the country as well. And you can see at the bottom where it says employee volunteer efforts, and the picture is of a man with a face shield. I just want to take a minute to tell everyone, these are employees who are taking their spare time and going and using our 3D printers to print pieces of a face shield. So making their own protective equipment and donating that to doctors who need it, to frontline employees who need it. This is Intel. This is who we are. Lastly, and this was a big announcement as well, we have pledged $50 million. And this is $40 million to response and online learning initiatives. Very exciting. Figuring out the best way to help these people who are going through, you know, how are we getting distance learning, who needs it, how do we identifying that. We're having constant meetings on that, working out our processes, talking to the right people in government, talking to the right people internally, and then a $10 million innovation fund. And we've been receiving your emails on great programs. We're figuring out the right people to connect them to, doing the right intake, and we'll be, you know, reaching back out shortly on that. So again, it's just important, if you were to take anything away from this, remember, besides being part of the critical and digital infrastructure, we're part of your community. We've been here for 40 years. We're invested. We're here. We're in this with you. And technology is rising to this challenge. And we are committed to helping fight this pandemic with you. Thank you.
Great, Danny, and thank you so much. And Danny, I'm going to stay with you for a minute here because we do have some Q&A coming in, and there's one specific for you, and it's so relevant to what you were just talking about. Some amazing community efforts. We're talking about all that money for nonprofits, all that PPE for our healthcare workers. Do we know how far those efforts have gone to meet the projected need?
You know, I would say that the need is is vast and great. So my understanding in conversations with the state is they need more and more. I can't tell you a day goes by that we don't, Renee Levine, who I'm lucky enough to work with, she's our community and external relations director as part of our group. She meets with the fire departments, local community leaders. She tells daily of need. So we know there's more. And, you know, I believe that, again, there could be announcements down the way, but I will give a notice to another, you know, company like Honeywell that has just signed a contract to build 5 million plus masks for the state of Arizona. I don't believe it's a donation, but they are under contract to do that. I think that, again, technology, manufacturing, we are rising to this challenge. We are not the government, we are the private sector, and we're here to help.
Great, Danny. And I have a question coming in that I'm going to offer up to anybody who wants to respond. A lot of you work with leaders in other communities. How has Greater Phoenix's response differed from other major metropolitan areas?
Eric, this is Robin. I don't mind addressing that. As I think you know, Eric, because you interviewed us, but I'm proud to be one of the original contributors to and an ongoing participant in what we have now deemed the Community Collaborative. It started as a collection of our local chambers, and then we found we had so many other amazing community organizations that were not chambers of commerce that had such incredibly valuable input that we expanded this to becoming the Community Collaborative. So one thing I've seen, and I've been communicating with individuals in other states as well as in other countries about how they're handling this. I think one of the things that we are doing here locally is we were very, very quick to become collaborative. The Greater Phoenix area in particular was amazing in its response time to come together. So it's not a cliche to say, you know, Phoenix greater together. We're really doing that. The number of organizations that reached out to me, the number of organizations that I reached out to, and everyone has the same intention. It's how can I help? What can we do? It's really looking for opportunities to assist and get us through this, and then be prepared for whatever might be on the other side of it. So I think that's one thing that stands out, is we were very quick to work together as a community.
Steve, you had something?
If I could add, Eric, if it's okay, if I could just add on to that, and I would assume the same is true for Ahron with hockey teams all around the country, and he's connected to that network, and there are major community foundations in every major metropolitan area. We're a little different because we're statewide. But what we've done is equal to and better in most cases. Most community foundations in United Ways, like we're doing, are collaborating, leveraging their dollars to ensure there's no duplication, ensure that we get the money where it needs to go efficiently. While in some places like New York instantly could raise 75 million, given the wealth profile in New York, or Silicon Valley overnight could raise 25 million. You know, we've raised a substantial amount in Phoenix. You know, as I said earlier, probably 30 million altogether if you look at all the funds and just what's in the governor's fund and the fund at ACF and the fund at Valley of Sun. United Way is pushing 20 million. And plus we have funds we just opened the other day a small business relief fund with the Phoenix Industrial Development Authority in the city of Phoenix. We opened another fund with the Arizona Commission for the Arts for emergency relief to artists and arts practitioners. So we're doing everything to get to every sector, and that is true around the country. So one of the things I've been most proud of is how we have stepped up as a community. I think to Robin's point of leveraging and collaborating and building on each other's work and each other's platforms. And I'd put Phoenix up against any major city in the country in terms of what we've done and what the companies have done. And just to echo and thank Danny and what Intel did, you know, Intel was amazing. One day you get an email, we're sending you $1 million for your community relief fund. That's the kind of stuff that Intel has done. You know, Bank of America did it, SRP did it. I don't want to leave anybody out because so many of the major companies here have stepped up and done that. So while the need is far greater than what we've raised, you know, it really moves you to see what this community can do when it applies itself.
And Steve, you mentioned Ahron, and Ahron, I'll bring you in, talking about collaboration and coming together. Talk to me about what all of the sports teams here locally are doing, right? You guys are all getting together on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we did, and I guess the video wasn't working, but I think they're going to send it out to all the participants. If you haven't seen it, the All AZ video, which features the big sports teams here in town, and a really nice video of uniting people together and you know, showing how we're used to rallying around sports, but now we need to rally around others. We need to rally around the people on the front line of this pandemic, the healthcare workers, the people working at the grocery stores, things like that. So, you know, I put this Arizona community from a sports perspective up against any other city in the whole country. You look at the contributions the Diamondbacks have made, the Cardinals, the Suns, you know, the things we've done. You know, I'm really proud of that. I'm proud to be a part of this community and play a role in that. And, you know, the nice thing that you start to see a good old fashioned competition, you know, if you see, you know, one team's doing something or another company's doing something, it kind of makes you want to step up and help as well. So I think that's been really good. But just to touch on Steve's point, Steve and I were actually on a call earlier today for arts and culture here in the greater Phoenix area, as well as throughout Arizona. And, you know, like all the other sports teams, we have a nonprofit, Arizona Coyotes Foundation, that supports a lot of great initiatives here in Arizona. And the challenge is that coming out of this, we're going to see such a hit to a lot of nonprofits throughout the state, just because there's depleted funding sources and certain dollars are getting allocated, you know, rightfully so, to addressing issues with this pandemic. So, you know, to the extent we can really rally together and, you know, reach into our pockets and pull even more out, I think it's really incumbent upon us to do that, because the future of this great state depends on that.
And Ahron, you talked about it earlier, you know, how sports can bring people together. And, you know, I'm one of those guys, you mentioned me, you know, I found myself sitting in front of YouTube watching a playoff game from 1989 over the weekend, just because I needed to get my fix in. How are you guys keeping your fans engaged right now, despite not being able to come to the arena?
Yeah, I mean, it's forcing us to be very creative and come up with new strategies to engage with our fans. So one of the things we're trying to do a lot of is showcase our players and our personalities behind the scenes, showing what they're doing. You know, they're just like the rest of us. They're, you know, watching Tiger King and, you know, in 2 days, and they're, you know, playing with their kids in the backyard for the, you know, 1,000th time. But you know, really just trying to, I mean, that's the beauty of sports, and that's kind of the, you know, the thing that I think people really connect to with these athletes is that peek behind the curtain and feeling like you really know them, you know, whether you're watching Hard Knocks on HBO or, you know, these different behind the scenes shows. So we've really taken that, you know, upon ourselves to really showcase who these people are. And then also just trying to do a lot of engagement with our great partners in the community. We have a lot of local food and beverage concepts, and you know, we've tried to promote to our audience the need to support them and go out and get takeout or delivery from them, and you know, hopefully rally everybody around some of these great local businesses.
All right, great. Thanks, sir. I have a question coming in here for Robin. Robin, the Asian community has seen an increase in hate crimes due to some misinformation and concerns about COVID-19, and the Black Chamber has been a strong ally rallying for people not to give in to those fears. What do you have to say to our community about this growing concern and how we face it head on?
Well, I guess I'll start with, you know, we're strong believers that acceptance of or ambivalence toward hate behavior against any one group is an endorsement of that behavior toward all groups. We don't get to pick and choose what type of behaviors hate behaviors are acceptable and which aren't. They're all unacceptable. So to that end, it was very easy for our organization to stand in very strong support of our Asian community as they were becoming the victimized segment of our local community. This is no different than when it impacted the African American community relative to law enforcement issues a year or so back, or the Hispanic community as it related to providing evidence of citizenship, those sort of things. It's the feeling to the impacted community is the same. The cause may be different, but the feeling and the impact is exactly the same. And to that end, we don't want it to exist at all. So one thing that I think we can do is learn from our behaviors during this pandemic. What we quickly learned about the pandemic is it couldn't care less what you look like, how much money you have, what your gender is, whether you're famous or not. It couldn't care less. And so it made us all equal. In the blink of an eye, in a course of days, we started to realize we are all exactly the same. You know, what we've shown is metaphorically, but almost literally, respect for each other's space, right? You ever try to get into a Costco in the last couple of weeks or any other location? You're standing 6 feet apart. We are literally respecting each other's space. And I think that the way we address this head on is remember to take that philosophically when this is over. Let's remember to respect each other's space. Each person's space is their beliefs, is their looks, is their culture. And if we continue to respect that, I think we can come out on the other side of this a better society.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. And you know, what can we learn about our behavior during this pandemic? And I got a question coming in, and I'll bring Danny in first, and then I want to ask Steve the same question. Danny, you know, you've been a leader in this community for a long time. How have your organization's management values changed as a result of this pandemic?
Well, thanks for that question. That's a good question. You know, I mentioned earlier that safety has always been a top priority for Intel. It's definitely emphasized more now. You know, we have COVID coaches, and it's going to be part of our training going forward. I would say that one thing I've learned about in regards to Intel is they're not going to change their timelines based on any pressure from anyone else. They're going to put the safety of their workers first. You know, I think that's one big takeaway from this, that they will always do what's in the best health of their employees first, that any decision that's made is going to take into account the seriousness of something like this going forward. And they'll always think about how do we best mitigate, how do we best protect. And then, you know, what are the best, you know, Intel has a lot of acronyms. One of them is a BKM and a best known method. And I think they have some very good best known methods. And when we meet with the governor's offices of various states, we'll share some of those and say, has other businesses open? You should consider some of what we've done that could help spread this going forward. These safety first values are good. But yeah, no, Intel will not put profit over public safety.
And Steve, I want to ask you the same question regarding the foundation.
Yeah, I think it's a really great question, and I really appreciate you asking it. You know, these are the times where that will really test whether you're aligned with your values or not. And your values should, I think as Danny was getting at, if you have the right values and you stick with them, they'll drive you through this. You know, we've got 7, I'll rattle them off quickly: exceptional service, integrity, nimbleness, collaboration, stewardship, innovation, and inclusion. And every single one of those has been at play since this crisis hit us beginning in March. We had to be exceptionally nimble. We had to be able to let go. Like we have millions deployed in the community. And a lot of the grants that we have deployed were to support a particular program or activity. We said to all that money, all those millions that are out there, we do like 70 million of grants a year, we're going to unrestrict them all. If you need to use them for your survival, if you need to use them to address COVID-19, all restrictions are off. So we had to shift quickly and allow that to happen. With our Community Impact Loan Fund, where we do below market rate loans to nonprofits, we suspended payments without penalty, without interest, for a quarter at a time for all of our borrowers, so they don't have to make those payments every month, and we'll just tack that on those quarters, however long it will be, to the end of the term of the loan. So we had to be nimble. We had to work quickly. We had to collaborate. I'm not going to go through all of them, but we had to steward all that money that people entrusted to us, like you heard me say. So exercising good stewardship was essential. We needed to innovate and create new funds instantly to support needs that came to our attention. And then I think to what Robin was talking about, in crises like this, inequities in all their various shapes and forms show up very clearly, and who is disproportionately hit by the virus and who is disproportionately hit by the economic crisis. And so, that idea of inclusion, who do we make sure need to be on our radar to get our grants, or what small businesses in communities that are distressed or low income communities do we need to get relief grants to, so they're not overlooked through other funding sources. So all of them play out, become exceptionally important, and really test you to say, are you adhering to them, and how are they helping you make the right decision for the community?
Well said, Steve. And we have some more questions coming in. Forgive me again, guys. I'm reading these cold as they come in. This one's specifically for Danny. Danny, we want to thank all the companies, large and small, for stepping up to support frontline workers as well as the general population. Transforming manufacturing infrastructure has, of course, not been easy. What does a reopening of your different businesses look like, and will you sustain multiple production lines?
Well, that is a very good question, and it's a nuanced question, to be honest, because as I mentioned earlier, Intel has been deemed essential, and for all the reasons we said. The reason that we're on this Zoom right now is one of them. The reason to stay connected, for mental, emotional, and physical health, because we touch everything. Our technology is integral for that. So our production lines are staggered shift-wise, but they are staying open. When it comes to when will we fully reopen and be fully optional, that will be a decision that is made when it is in the best and most safe interest of our employees. I can tell you I have had the fortunate ability to sit in on one meeting where I've heard just a conversation about what that could possibly look like. And it will be the government's going to make their decision, then our executives will make their decision after that. And it's based on the safety of our employees. Now, we are part of a global supply chain, and that does present certain challenges, but we have bulk manufacturing here. We're up and running. We're meeting customer demands as best as we can while keeping public safety of our workers first in mind.
All right, thanks, Danny. Before we close, we're getting close to wrapping things up here. Just want to give everybody some quick time here for a final takeaway. And Ahron, I want to start with you. We've learned a lot today. Some very impactful statements from each of our panelists. What are your thoughts? And give you here about a minute or two here to just kind of wrap up and get a collective thought from you on where we're going and what we need to do.
Yeah, this has been a challenging and trying time for all of us. And I think one of the things that's the most difficult, look at our brothers and sisters and friends and neighbors throughout the whole community. A lot of people are dealing with a lot of uncertainty right now. They don't know where they're going to come up with money for rent payments or food or just taking care of their families. And it's not easy for anybody. And it really puts things in perspective. I mean, we all love sports, but sports really plays second fiddle to the challenges that everybody's dealing with right now. We hope that we can continue to do good for this community. But the thing that I'm so proud of being an Arizonan, and not just in the sports context, I mean, this whole community, you just see we walk our kids around the neighborhood every night, and you just see this hope and this resolution in everybody's eyes, and you talk to people, and it just gives me great confidence that I know that we're going to get through this. Reading a book right now by Sebastian Junger, and he's talking about tribalism, and they're doing a study on Great Britain during World War II, and depression and suicide rates actually went down while Great Britain was being bombed. And it's just this idea of, in the face of adversity, it's wonderful to see all of us coming together and supporting each other. And I know that we'll make it through this together.
Thanks, Ahron. And Robin, I'll bring you in for some final thoughts as well.
Thanks, Eric. Actually, I want to just take this moment. As I was listening to Danny talk about the great things that Intel has done, I want to make sure that we're also recognizing so many of our other great large companies in the Phoenix metro area. SRP, APS, very early financial contributors to any support efforts. Cox Communications, CenturyLink, significant contributions of time and resources to help with technology needs. Blue Cross Blue Shield, obviously, as a health insurer, this is impacting them in a unique way, and still they're looking for ways to contribute and help. And each of these, for all of their individual great things they're doing, most valuable to me is they've been very quick because of their significance, right? They get access to information very quickly. They've been very, very quick to disseminate that information to organizations like mine and the other chambers so that we can get the information out to the small business community so that people can make qualified, informed decisions. So I just wanted to just take a moment and thank all of those organizations.
Thanks, Robin, and perfect segue. We'll send it over to Danny over at Intel for some final thoughts here.
Yes, I'm blessed to work at a company like Intel that has great leadership like Bob Swan, local leadership like Darcy Ortiz. But again, it is our employees, the 12,000 that I mentioned, that are your neighbors, that have kids doing the distance learning with you, sending in their assignments. Equally frustrated, probably blowing through screen time goals they swore they would adhere to 4 months ago, just like my wife and I. But what I want to say is it's similar to what my friend Ahron said, and I'm guessing that it's the same thing I notice when I go for a walk. It's people out waving to each other, saying hi. This sense of community kind of coming back that you hadn't seen in a while. It gives you a little bit sense of hope. And you mix that with what I'm seeing on the technology front. Working for a technology company, I believe the technology is going to play a role in defeating this pandemic or mitigating this pandemic and playing defense against it going forward. And I'll just add one thing to that. Whatever comes next, I believe we'll be better prepared. I think human beings are our greatest resource and will always rise to the occasion. And I think we are doing that now. Hopefully leave on a note of hope for everyone. And, again, when you see Intel, besides knowing that we're inside these devices and we're helping to keep everyone connected, helping to keep you guys connected to your hospitals, we're also out there in your community as well. Thank you so much for having me.
And Danny, don't feel bad. My wife and I have definitely failed to meet those screen time goals as well with our kids. No chance. Steve, final thoughts?
Yeah, I just kind of pick up on what everybody said. The four of us didn't rehearse this, but I think, as you can see, we all share the same, to go back to the last question, same set of values. I think we've all learned, like I look at my team and my staff and across the state, you can tell by the color of my hair, I was never a fan of telecommuting. It's a young generation thing. I never got it. I never thought we could operate with it. And I blame them of creating the coronavirus to force me to agree to a telecommuting policy. And I said, you didn't have to do that. But they have proven to me that, your organization is much more flexible and resilient than maybe you think it is. And that if you rely on your staff, as Danny's talked about Intel and Ahron has talked about his team and Robin, his members, you rely on the intelligence and the wisdom and the innovation of those people, and you believe in them, they will carry you and they'll carry your organization and they'll enable you to do great and important things. And so, for the Arizona Community Foundation and our affiliates across the state, we've learned that we can operate very effectively and very differently. And we also, I think, to what you heard, that we see the pain on the front lines, we see the challenges, and we know that the meaning of our work to get behind organizations that are working in the cracks of the community where often government doesn't go and most people don't know about, that our mission has never been more important than it is right now, and that we have to be taking what we've learned from this to the future, because there'll be a lot of future adaptations and challenges that we need to be able to address. And now we know that we can be really flexible, really fast, and we're going to have to adapt to whatever this new normal is that we're all talking about, and to make sure that those people who support the community and the work that they do, don't forget about them out there, and don't forget about what comes next, and rebuild our community even stronger than it was before this started.
Well, Steve, Ahron, Robert, Danny, thank you all so much. Before we put a wrap-up slide on the screen, I'm going to ask all of you, awkward moment, look at the camera, pause, smile. We're going to take a screenshot here for when we share these out. All right, Bethany's telling me she's got it. Real quick, next week, a reminder, we're going to be talking about construction, housing, and commercial real estate. That will be Wednesday, April 22nd at 11 a.m. We'll have that invite going out shortly. Also next Friday, April 24th, Chris Camacho, CEO of GPEC, he'll be providing that special economic update on the status of our economy. So keep an eye in your email inbox for those details. And if you ever have any questions at all, you can head to gpec.org, a great resource page there on their website. So again, thank you everybody, Danny, Steve, Ahron, Robert, for joining us today. Thank you to all the participants. And we look forward to seeing you back here next week, April 22nd at 11 a.m. Thank you all.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.